In the last ice age, a tough breed of hunter-gatherers, the Gravettians, roamed the vast, unforgiving lands of Europe. They scraped by, unaware that the world around them was growing colder, more hostile. As glacier expanded, much of their home became desolate, and they were forced to retreat. Their culture began to fall apart, but in the west, beyond the Alps, a new life stirred. Between 22 and 17,000 years ago, the Solutreans emerged. They didn't just survive, they carved out a future, mastering the cold with the crafted stone tools, their famous Solutrean points. These people didn't give up. They adapted, they thrived, leaving behind traces of their way of life, campfires, art in hidden caves, witnesses to a time when the world was ice. I will tell you about the Solutreans, their craftsmanship, their survival, and in the end, one wild theory about them that you never heard. This is The Immortal Art. I'm your host, Eldin. Episode 60. The Master Tool Makers, the Solutreans. If you like The Immortal Art, you can support it for little as $1 per month. You can donate one time or longer. It's up to you. The links are below. Check them out. Subscribe, share, comment, and follow. Thank you, Arne, for the generous donation. The Solutrean culture was uncovered at Grotte du Charnier, beneath the towering limestone of the rock of Solutrean in eastern France. The rock, formed long before humans ever set foot there, looms over the quiet commune of Solutrepoily. In 1866, the digging began, and soon enough, they found bones of horses. Then came something more, layers filled with bones, flint tools, all dating back to the Upper Paleolithic. Archaeologist Henri Tasteau-Ferry pieced together a history showing the place was once a thriving hunting ground for the culture that hasn't been uncovered yet. By the way, these are all French names, and I don't know how to pronounce them. Anyway, if you remember from the previous episode, as the last glacial maximum set in, the Gravettians found themselves pushed to the brink. The ice spread, and much of Europe became a frozen wasteland. Camps vanished, especially in the north, and the people once spread across the continent were cut off. Two groups survived, on the west of the Alps and the other to the east. While the group in east struggled to make a life in harsher lands, the western group flourished, evolving into Solutreans. You can check about the Gravettians in the previous episode, episode 59. This culture, emerging around 25,000 years ago, became known for its expert stonework and stone art carvings. For the details about their stone art, you can check the episode 49. The link is below. Their genetics tied them to their Gravettian ancestors, with the robust faces and the dark skin compared to modern Europeans. They hunted in a vast, treeless world, making their home in steppe tundra of southwestern Europe. Though their numbers were small, they survived, even grew, during one of the coldest periods in human history. The Solutreans carved their name into history, pun intended, with the mastery of stone tools that we never seen before. Flintknapping became their art, a craft tracing back to Homo erectus some 2 million years ago. As the time passed, the Upper Paleolithic saw the rise of blade core technology, the long, lethal blades in the hands of hunters. The Gravettians used those with deadly precision, taking down mammoths with ease. Yet, the Solutreans took a different path. By shaping bifacial points, they stopped using projectiles. Why this shift? Perhaps it was scarcity of wood. These bifacial points eclipsed all others. For 1,500 years, the Solutreans refined their techniques until the bifacial point emerged, perfectly symmetrical and a marvel of stonework. They turned dull edges into fine instruments, crafting tools that spoke of survival and artistry in the world where life hung by a thread. Solutrean knappers used both hard and soft hammers. A stone hammer for roughing out the shape, and the antlers or bone to thin it down. Tricky part is reading the stone, knowing where to strike and to remove the right flake. It's risky. One wrong move and you wasted hours of work. Solutrean points weren't uniform either. The most famous, the laurel leaf bifaces, thin, leaf-shaped tools, some as small as 4 centimeters, other as long as 25 centimeters. Some think they were knives, others say thrusting spears. Either way, a 25 centimeters would deliver a fatal blow to any Ice Age animal. I think they were ritualistic. They found 15 laurel leaf points, each between 25 to 35 centimeters long and impossibly thin, some just 1 centimeter thick. They were masterpieces of flintknapping. At the time, nothing else compared. These points were too fragile for practical use. Only 2 show signs of cutting. Most likely, they were never meant for the work, but held as a symbol. Flint knapper Jacques Pellegrin believes that these points were crafted by a few extraordinary individuals, perhaps even just one. The craftsmanship of these points took resources and time, and one has to have an eye for the quality materials. The flint used didn't come easy. The Solutreans traveled great distances for the best stone, sometimes bringing it over 260 kilometers away. They even experimented with a heat treatment, carefully heating stones to make them easier to work. Yet, interestingly, the points found in Volgu, these 15 laurel leaf points, were likely not heat-treated, as the risk of damaging such a high-quality material was too great. In the end, these points weren't just tools, they were art, carefully placed in the ground, pointing upwards. Were they buried for ritual, for safekeeping, or something else? We will never know. The craftsmanship speaks for itself. The Solutreans aimed for perfection, and they achieved it. The Solutreans are credited as the first to use spear throwers, or atlatls, an innovation that extended their reach in hunting. Spear throwers might not get the same attention as bow and arrows, but don't be fooled, they were incredibly efficient. They could hurl larger projectiles, and while more resource-intensive than arrows, they were easier to make. The tools, alongside large bifaces like laurel leaf points, show how specialized Solutrean technology had become. Across different regions, the Solutreans developed unique styles. For instance, arrowheads found in modern-day Spain. Those have been the earliest evidence of bow and arrow used in Europe, long before we thought this technology existed. The Solutreans crafted scrapers, drills, and the burins, essential for the shaping hard materials such as bone. Bone technology, while less prevalent, still played a crucial role. Long bone points, capable of deep penetration, and tools such as eyed needles for sewing clothes were vital for survival. During the last glacial maximum, staying warm was as important as finding food. Their clothing, crafted from hides and furs, was a necessary task in their harsh environment. We might not have much evidence of their garments, but the Solutrean skill in every aspect of survival is undeniable. The Solutreans were hunters, gatherers, and survivors. They lived in a world when game was plenty, and they knew how to kill it. At Solutra, where they got their name, the bones of thousands of horses are scattered around. The kill wasn't a fluke. It was a strategy. Horses, migrating across the landscape, were driven into natural trap, a curve in a rock when the hunters could pick them off, spear after spear. A well-placed dart could bring down 200 kilograms heavy horse. A good day's work might feed the tribe for weeks. The Solutreans were specialists. Rabbits, fish, reindeer, whatever moved, they hunted. In Iberia, the game was different. Ibex, red deer, even the occasional woolly rhinoceros. They took every scrap of meat, boiled bones for grease, leaving no part to waste. Shellfish from the shore, trout from the rivers, nothing was off limits. When they weren't hunting, they were in caves, hiding from the cold, huddled together in shelters. The winters were brutal, and they used what they had: fur, fire, and they made it through. These people, the Solutreans, knew how to work with their hands, how to carve and shape the world around them. The Solutreans, in their enduring kinship web, managed to reach across formidable mountains, forging connections that birthed innovation. Although Gravettians traded with another Gravettians, the Solutreans did it more frequently. Among Solutreans, information flowed like a lifeline, shaping a culture rich in knowledge. They shared wisdom about their superior tool-making. The artistic spirit danced through pigments, with red ochre splashed across tools and bodies, a burst of identity and ritual that painted their world in vibrant hues. The Solutreans crafted jewelry from shells and animal teeth, each piece a statement, a story. Yet, curiously, their art lacked the figurines that characterized their predecessors. Instead, they communicated through engravings, and they made music. The rock in the caves, also discussed in episode 49, was filled with engravings with naturalistic designs reflecting the pulse of life: deer, bisons, wild goats. The Solutreans didn't leave much behind in terms of burials. Maybe they didn't bury their dead, but cremated them. The Solutrean way of life slowly slipped away as the world warmed after the last glacial maximum. Their finest tool-making, such as laurel leaf points, people just stopped making them. Trade networks fell apart. North of the Pyrenees, a new way of crafting emerged: simple tools, more practical. It wasn't about fancy craftsmanship anymore, it was about survival. Hundreds of years went by, and people willingly let go of their old ways. Climate change disrupted everything, as it will disrupt everything in the future for us. Climate change is a very slow process that goes for hundreds and even thousands of years. Sure, the world was warming for the Solutreans, but that didn't make life easier. It made it different. The new culture spread across France and Spain, though some Solutrean tradition held on in south of the Pyrenees. By the time the Magdalenian people took over, Solutrean techniques were relics. The Magdalenians came to the land previously abandoned by the Gravettians, and they started repopulating these parts of Europe. And that's where I'll pick up in the next final video. But first, as I promised, I have to talk about Solutrean hypothesis. Here's the deal. There is this Solutrean hypothesis, this wild idea that Europeans from modern-day France and Spain were the first to get to the America across ice around 21,000 years ago. It's been around since 1970s. Two guys, Stanford and Bradley, wrote about it. They looked at the stone tools, the bifaces made by both the Solutreans and the Clovis people. Seemed similar at the first glance, but not everybody bought it. Hell, most didn't. They wrote a book in 2012 called Across Atlantic Ice and dug into their theory. It goes like this. Solutreans has the overshot flaking technique, thinning their bifaces just right. Stanford and Bradley said the Clovis people in the North America did the same thing. Other archaeologists weren't so convinced. The technique? Turns out, lots of people stumble upon it. Some researchers did some tests. The overshot flaking isn't as efficient as Stanford made it sound, and it wasn't even that common in Clovis sites. Then there's the time gap. The Solutreans stopped making their tools around 90,000 years ago, while Clovis people in North America stepped at the scene 13,500 years ago. 5,000 years of nothing in between. Even the technology really didn't match. Sure, both cultures buried their tools, made blades, and used bone rods. But Clovis points have hollow bases. Solutreans were more leaf-shaped. Different shapes, different designs. Sometimes two cultures can make similar stuff without knowing a damn thing about each other. And let's not forget genetics. No traces of Ice Age Europeans in the Native American DNA. None. Zero. Nada. Nothing. All the genetic trails lead back to Asia. Haplogroup X. Yeah, it's existing in both Europe and America, but it's not a match. Science says that we have a common ancestors way back, not some ancient traveler from Europe setting foot in the New World. And this Atlantic crossing business, come on. I wish it's real. The ice stretched for thousands of kilometers, dangerous as hell, and only there for a couple of months in a year. Sure, anything is possible, but we're talking evidence here, not dreams. Now, the Kelp Highway hypothesis, that one makes more sense. People coming from Asia along the coast. Or the Mammoth Steppe idea, humans came to North America from Asia via the Bering Land Bridge during the last ice age around 20,000 years ago, following herds of animals. At least now you know the story. This concludes this episode. I want to thank you for joining and listening. I hope I inspired you. I hope you learned something.